means you're not doing enough work.
Okay. Because I strongly suspect based on troubleshooting with Lorenzo different part. It's controller just not. Yes, the question is.
But it would be nice to add in the default route. Yes.
Or send in currents.
If you start seeing RAs again. So basically, add the default route and see if you're getting RAs.
You've done that already.
That's happened once.
Yeah.
So I mean, it could have just been that happened the second they did it. Magic colors.
For me, arrays fell to get array, get array, but it didn't tell me the network connectivity, but looking at this,
So I mean,
detail exceeded what network issues at the same time.
kind of sounds like this. When we send traffic normally, yeah, I mean, or possibly, the wireless LAN controller doesn't actually look there because it's not addressed to the wireless LAN.
Oh no! From what I heard today, this controller doing totally insane thing, trying to prevent undesirable traffic on the network and doing totally like strange things. So I would expect anything possible.
Yeah.
That wireless LAN controller.
I mean, it's also a Cisco widget. So
There's no Cisco people.
it's a good one. It's a Cisco widget.
There's two of them.
Yeah.
Let's
cast it together.
I know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So basically, when it doesn't look like not export issue, it looks like issue with 6 on wireless
It
controller.
looks like issue that makes people sad.
Yeah, which been hidden by dual stuff.
Sure. But it's a good demonstration that having NAT64 as the primary network would not necessarily be a brilliant solution.
So the primary one off and make people using it so you guys know about that stuff being broken.
And that's what we're doing, right? We're like, we turned down V4 here. We suggested people to do it. Okay.
Actually, it's much more radical than what we were proposing because we were suggesting people keep duals like but not as keep both as SID. So in this case, people could call back and could use it, right? What happened here was much more radical. Into all the
Hey there. How you doing? I'm Darren. US Bank.
So, hello everyone. If people could walk in and sit down and take a seat and stop talking and listen for a second, and I'm going to talk louder and louder and louder until people... Thank you very much. Apparently that didn't work for Kathleen or Elliot. And still doesn't. Okay. So I'll give people another 30 seconds to walk in and sit down. Alrighty, we'll count that as good enough. So hello everybody and welcome to the joint Ops Area and Opsawg meeting. There are blue sheets which should be circling or will be soon. Benoit is just filling them in. This is the IETF note well. Please make sure that you note it well. It has important stuff on. Some of it is legal and IPR stuff. Please make sure that you understand what it means and talk to your lawyers or whatever. We're not going to interpret it for you. Next slide. So, as I say, this is the joint Opsawg and Ops Area meeting. We start off with Ops Area first. Note well we've done. Blue sheets we've done. Who would like to do minutes? I know someone would just love to do minutes for us. And suddenly everybody who used to be my friend is ignoring me. Like, for example, Wes Hardiker, who's sitting in the front and would just love to do some minutes. Well, in that case, who wants to do minutes because Wes says he'll do JavaScribe? He will win our undying love. Or at least... Okay, good enough. Nothing's really happened yet. Alrighty, so we have a JavaScribe, we have minutes, slides are over here. We also have asked Kathleen to come along and give a talk on the Oh, actually first, agenda. This is our agenda. We've asked Kathleen to come along and give a quick update on effects of pervasive encryption on operators. This is a document which had gone through one IETF last call, then had a bunch of reasonably sized large changes, and has gone through somewhat of an ISG eval, but now it's having a second IETF last call. This is a document that I would really appreciate it if people can read and can comment from an operator's standpoint. Kathleen will explain what it is, but it's, I think, a really important document for operators to actually provide input on. Network slicing, as you can see, these are the documents that are going to be discussed quickly. And then we have some open mic, and then Opsawg portion comes after that. Any agenda bashing? Everybody know what's going on? Excellent. Kathleen, I think you're up.
And while you do, Kathleen, so let me remind everybody that it's a good time to speak to non-com as well, right? They are on site. You can visit them. You can send your feedback with the online tool.
Yeah, provide comments early and often. Hi, so I'm here to talk about
Excuse me, Kathleen, I have to interrupt. We have a problem in the room. It's very hard to hear people in the front. Even I'm in the second row, and it's even hard for me.
Is it okay from this mic?
A little better. But
Closer.
We
My
have
goodness.
to find a way to get
I
the
will
volume up.
try.
So
now.
let me do a test. Is it better this way? Lee? Okay, good. So that close. Okay.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I'm here to talk about the effect of pervasive encryption on operators. And so, let's see. So this is a draft Al Morton and I have been working on for quite some time, it feels like now. And essentially, the goals were to document the impacts from increased encryption on security and network operations. And in some cases, this would be a shift in how some of the functions are performed, if they are still performed, right? Because some of these functions might be eliminated as we move to different encryption scenarios. And the draft does bounce between various scenarios, like only having a 5-tuple exposed or a 2-tuple. And so that is something to note. Let's see. And it's also to have these documented so that new methods, where appropriate, might be developed to replace methods. So with that, the document does not try to solve the problems. That would be taking on much more than we want to at this time. When I'll bring up the table of contents in a bit, but essentially, once these are documented, if there are ones that should have some work done on them, it could be a draft on it. Each section could be a draft on its own, right? In terms of how do you progress or change the ones that make sense to look at. So we don't try to solve the problems. So we try to document the current state. And in some cases, and what we're learning through comments and feedback is that there might be multiple approaches being used for the same thing. If we haven't captured an approach used for a particular goal, it would be good to have the current practices all documented within that goal area. And that might even help some of the operators because some may have come along further in terms of dealing with encryption, right? So it might help people with solutions, understanding, they have the same goal to be met, and this is the data that they were using and how they accomplish that goal. Right, so I just wanted to make sure folks are familiar with some of the principles as to, and I guess this is complicated because there's lots of reasons why encryption is increasing on the internet. One motivator is privacy and confidentiality. So you could look to RFC 6973. If folks aren't familiar with that document, I think it's a good read and an important consideration so that you're looking at this from perspectives of others as well, right? So this document's focused on operators' impacts, but understanding the flip side of why this push is happening is important. So this is one of the reasons for that push. RFC 7258 is another, right? So I think most people should be familiar with that RFC and the plenary from several years back where the IETF made a decision that pervasive monitoring is classified as an attack. And with that decision and the document, there was a call for balance between security and network monitoring. And so this draft is meant to be an initial step at working towards that balance, right? So if we have to understand what's needed on both ends of this to be able to have meaningful discussions in terms of how do we go forward. It's 7258 is nice because it does call out network monitoring explicitly and separate from other types of separately from like pervasive monitoring, right? So it does call out that there are separate functions here at hand and separate goals here, and and that's why we're looking for balance with those particular. So this is just a note of some of the changes from 7258, and there's a later slide in the backup that could be distributed that has a little bit fuller a list of efforts from the pervasive monitoring decisions. So opportunistic security was a change, and basically, how many in the room are familiar with opportunistic security? Oh, great. So it's a fair amount. The push for that, just to give a real quick overview for those who aren't, is that once you enable encryption without authentication, you're increasing the costs for monitoring, and it moves the monitoring capabilities away from something that can be passively done in mass to a targeted scenario that costs more money to accomplish, right? So they might just be trying to figure out what Joel and I are talking about as opposed to what we're all talking about in a room, or not in a room, but so with that, I think there's minimal use of that with TLS. And IPsec has had null authentication for quite some time, and this concept's been around and in use for a while. It could just be server-to-server tunnels that get stood up, and this allows boxes that don't know each other to be able to negotiate IPsec or other encryption protocol negotiations without prior knowledge of each other. Let's see. Some other changes that have happened in the past few years is improvements for TLS 1.3, which isn't yet out, but forward secrecy and other changes were put into 1.3. And these, while they present problems for administrators, the recommendations were actually in TLS 1.2 best practices already. So I think in cases where we're seeing pushback on that is just when people haven't upgraded to the BCP recommendation. So they're still using RSA static keys because they have to perform monitoring. And it's also, so in that case, it's an important case to think about because there are needs that so sorry, I probably shouldn't use the word needs, but enterprises have, so enterprise is one of the big cases where that usage has come up. And they have requirements to monitor within their network. They're actually not required, as far as I can tell from regulations, to encrypt. They are encrypting their internal traffic because it's a best practice and a good thing to do to prevent attacks. So I think that's a laudable goal. And they have to figure out how they can do the monitoring necessary, but still protect their internal data from attacks. So I think this is also pointing to, by enumerating all of these problems, we're pointing to problems that could be a result of issues with data and troubleshooting capabilities, logging from applications, right? So there's a mix of things that are going to surface from this. And I think the discussions that hopefully this draft and other work will enable will be positive to get us towards a better end game. I personally feel that if we don't get a handle on this, the encryption that folks want to see won't happen because it won't have the adoption. But if we hit this head on and we have the hard discussions and we figure out how do we go forward with each of these things, and we offer help and have operators, document these, and we work together with protocol designers, developers. My hope is we get to a better place and we figure out a balance and what that balance means for us. So what's the problem? I don't think I have to describe the problem at all for this group, but maybe I will briefly. So this particular example, I actually haven't talked to this slide in ages. There were cases where ad injection was being inserted into packets, and there were some providers who were stopping start TLS negotiations so they could continue their practice. And that one in particular was called out in media and by regulators, so it was halted. And but it was just one instance of this where there was a practice in place and there was no other mechanism that was seen by the folks with this practice to worry about their revenue streams and whatever their obstacles were. And so they found a way to prevent encryption. All right, so we have the draft has been contribution driven, and it probably shows there's been lots of different editors' hands all over the document. So I apologize a bit if that makes it a little tougher to read. But basically it covers lots of different areas. So network and service provider monitoring, encryption for enterprises. And so this is a little bit of an eye chart even for me up here. Let me see if I can call out. So some ones that I think have gotten a little more attention but maybe could use more would be load balancers, DPI, performance enhancing proxies, content filtering for sure. HTTP header insertion. The enterprises, I think we're pretty well set on that, but if there are more comments, we'd love to get them. And I'm going to try to leave a lot of the time to discuss here gaps. So I'm actually going to make this quite quick. So I hope that that works, and I hope that people are interested in discussing maybe gaps that they see here in the agenda, or if they've read the draft and they have some direct feedback. So security, there's a whole section where security was pulled out separately from the different types of networks in the structure, because some of these applied more broadly. And in some cases, like the DDoS, it talks to it not being a problem for being able to fingerprint traffic, whether it's encrypted or not encrypted. Things like that were actually verified with 3 different people at different organizations, the text was, who do DDoS research. Now, we weren't so lucky in every single contribution that we were able to get diverse input. So that would help if you have expertise in one area, that you review it and contribute and improve that text. Application flow information. So the IP fix text was recently added in the latest revision. That was a glaring gap that Benoit pointed out, and I'm glad that we were able to fix that. If there are others, I hope that those of you with the expertise can help so that we can get this documented. TLS server name indication, I think that section probably needs a little updating because there's active discussion happening on that now. So it's kind of a moving target at the moment. Let's see. And this last section on mobility could use a lot of help. So we have not had enough contributions on that section, in my opinion. So we had maybe 3 different people over the whole section, but it's a really big space. So if you have expertise in that area, I ask that you review the document in last call and provide your feedback and comments and text. So this one only, right now, it just covers the effective encrypted ACKs, effective encrypted transport headers, effective encryption on new or emerging services, and effective encryption on mobile network evolution. There were other sections that got put back into the main parts of the document, so it wasn't separated out as mobile specific. So the impact varies because people operate their networks very differently, right, from network to network, and depending on the type of network that you're operating. Let me see if there's anything. So I guess a few points, like I left out some of the sections in the table of contents that were displayed, because things like data storage it's not an issue, right? So I work at a vendor, and I had reached out to Lars for any feedback or questions or text on that, and I think neither of us are seeing big issues because encryption was required by our customers. We implemented it, and we also made sure that the management functions that they needed were present with that encryption. So I think that leaving that text in is good as an example of this can be done, and you can do your monitoring. And I know that's different than the larger network. I understand that, but it just does serve as an example. And another area that's covered is hosted providers. But the motivations there were very different, right? So if you're a customer getting your data hosted by a service provider, you're coming in with encryption requirements, right? And so the motivation for a move to encryption was different there. So I don't think it's as controversial, and I don't think it's as in need of as much attention as some of the other sections, just in terms of review and making sure that we get this right. Middle box functions. So I think I highlighted some of these that understand, making sure that we've got this right would be really helpful from those of you who could contribute. And yeah, DDoS and incident management, the impact does vary there. Some people are really reliant on decrypted streams, and others who have quite advanced CSRTs have worked ways around that. So it really depends on operational practices, and maybe if we are sharing more on these practices, we'll learn from each other and understand how we can move forward in better ways. So I think that's about it. And I'm hoping some of you have questions or have been following the list and are engaged and can chat about this.
Hi, Arthur Hecker from Huawei. Interesting talk. It's not a question, it's more of a comment. So you are talking about the impact of, let's say, security measures on network management, right?
Yes.
However, in principle, they are mutually dependent, because you can also be talking, you could be talking right now about the impact of network management on the security of the network, right?
Can you repeat that a little closer to the mic? I'm sorry.
Yes, so you could be talking about the impact of network management on the security levels that are achievable. Given that today most of security is actually active, you need monitoring and updates to maintain your security level. So this operational security assurance depends hugely on the monitoring. So I was just commenting that this is indeed a very important and interesting dependency, but it's mutual. So we can probably maybe extend this to discuss this mutual dependency.
Right. So the document frames the encryption usage and motivations in the introduction. Then it moves on to operator impacts, and that includes security operators as well as network operators. And it's aimed at having the goal stated and what data is used to accomplish those functions, and then not to solve anything. And we might not have gotten that perfect everywhere. So if you're reading the draft and you think we didn't do that quite well enough to keep it neutral enough, let us know.
And actually, let me quickly chime in as well. If folk read the earlier versions of the document, sorry, I'll get closer to the mic again because they're really sensitive. If folk have read earlier versions of the document or read it when it had its last call, I strongly encourage them to reread it. One of the big changes has been in the tone of it. And, potentially that's something that still should get a little bit of looking at. But some folk had viewed it as that the message was saying that encryption causes issues and so should be stopped. That's really not what the document is trying to say. If you got that from an earlier version, please reread it because it has definitely changed a bunch.
Lee Howard, it's actually related to the point that I wanted to make. So I'm doing a Rip Van Winkle. I've been unaware, I've been ignorant for a long time, so I've only just skimmed it, and it looks like you've done a great job of striking the balance in tone.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I think you're there, at least in most sections. There are a couple places where I'm going to review as much as I can. It's a fairly lengthy document, so I just don't know when I would find time. But I will also then ask other people in the room if everybody will commit to reviewing a page or two or a section that's relevant to their area of expertise. This could be it's already, it's pretty good. There are a couple places where I'd like to see just a little, minor wording changes for clarity. But this is really good work to see, and I'm really happy to see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathleen. This is Mike Ackerman. First off, thanks for doing this. This was really good. My question is on your final bullet on the slide that you currently have up there. Why is it different when things are in a cloud-hosted environment? Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so I made that comment in general and left that section out because I'm not seeing the same types of controversy for that, because the motivations for encryption in those spaces are different. Now, this is not getting into so with that, I'm not getting into like the discussions of the TLS working group and applying that to hosted environments, right? That's a more general, so not specific to a hosted provider. The use of encryption in a hosted environment, I think, is pretty non-controversial, right? Because you as a customer go with an SLA and the service provider is going to implement that because they're held to it. If there's a general monitoring need because of a change in what type of encryption is used, then that's different, right? So that would apply across the board.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. More discussion to have on that one, though, because
Yeah, so maybe I have to. I don't think the document gets into that per se, but if it does, I can look back to see, or if you notice a problem, please point it out.
Actually, I
and,
haven't seen a lot of dialogue in that area, and I think it would be nice if there was more, because in some cases it gets a little darker when it's in the cloud, and some of that need is even greater at that point. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ignas Bogdanas Equinix speaking as a working group member. So I've been socializing this document and in general this topic of increased encryption with several operator forums and events, and a few topics as an aggregated feedback about that. First, on the language. There is a difference of the language used to describe the same things here at IETF and at operations community. To give an example, saying that encryption will affect the functions of middle boxes might not mean not the same as saying that encryption will affect the IGMP snooping on my LASOP switch and therefore break my IPTV service. So if more feedback from operations community is expected, maybe a companion document or simply some other format of translating this into the language and topics which are more relevant to the actual field operations would be good. I do understand this is a hard work, but this is just a feedback from the community.
So are you volunteering for the companion document?
Did I say that? Another one on certain...
Would it make sense to add a couple of more examples like this? Like the one that you mentioned with IGP snooping that affect the real service in the document, just examples?
That'd be great.
Yes, and that would be a very good start and well, basically clarification of, in practical terms, what this document is talking about.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we'll look for your feedback on the IETF list. When does the last call end, just so folks in the room are aware? If you look at the document, it's on it.
Yeah, I believe it's another 2 weeks or so. So it's relatively soon. Benoit, I believe, is checking because he's nice.
If I may, this is Elliot here. Ignas, can you talk a little bit about which operational communities you've been talking to and just to give a feel for that?
So in particular, this has been presented at INOG, which is Operators Forum for the Russian-speaking region, which is part of a RIPE region coverage. This has been presented at EuroAX. This has been presented as a side meetings at RIPE meeting, some other smaller country-specific network operator groups.
Thank you.
So
And
second one
so,
about...
one clarification. So whenever you speak about operators, how many do we speak about here? Speak about 2, or can you quantify how many?
You mean people in the room attending those events?
Yes, and getting you feedback on the topic.
Attendance of, for example, INOG RIPE is around 500, 600, EuroAX 120 or so. The target audience and the feedback, it's tens, mid-digit tens. So second one about the design assumptions and certain design prescriptions, which are in the document. Quite a lot of security aspects in general very much depend on actual network design. And yes. This security is not a substitute for a proper network design and vice versa too. Some things or some assumptions in a document, for example, of what goes in a data center and which part of a data center or doesn't go in a data center, load balancing and how that is done and what is the layering of those things. It's not necessary always reflect of the actual deployments or say the big portion of the deployments. Each of the deployments tends to be unique. However, there are some kind of a common denominators, and not all of them align too well with what the assumptions of a network design in the document are. The third one probably...
Yes. So, just to address that, I did ask at the beginning of this that if there are other ways in which the same goal is gone after, that we get descriptions on that, and it fits to your point, right? Because the design of the network may impact the choice
Yes.
but may have the same goal.
And the third one, probably the most controversial. Quite frequently, the feedback was, does this, after reading this document and listening to all this, does it mean that encryption is evil and we should do less of it?
Really, no. The whole point is to start having the conversation, because if operators are having problems and they have specific functions and application developers are not aware of those functions, this is one way to surface those so that the conversations can happen. I like to kind of hit problems head on, and I guess I did with this one. It's been a lot of fun to work on. But it opens up the conversation, and the goal would be, how do we actually get the encryption deployed? Because we can release all the protocols we want. It doesn't mean they're going to be adopted and deployed, right? So having these conversations on obstacles is really important, because at the end of the day, operators are out there on the network and make choices, right? And so they have to go on what they have. And so if we open up this conversation, we may give them more choices.
Yes, definitely. And just to be clear, it's not me asking this question. I'm just relaying.
Okay. Yeah. So that's come up. I actually responded to that, I think this morning on List, the same point. And hopefully that's been made clear enough. I thought it was clear enough in the draft, but if you see text that you think makes that confusing, please point it out, because I'm not seeing it. And I'm probably reading with a bias. So it would be helpful to have that pointed out so we could correct it.
Thanks.
Thank
and
you.
Maybe one example of this. So in the quick charter, I insisted that we have a management draft explaining, like in the draft that Kathleen mentioned, what would we lose by doing encryption? And the only point is to document this. Now, it's up to the community to decide if it's a big issue, a small issue, or something we should not address, but documenting the gap of what we've been losing is important.
It could also result in discussions on whether we're using one type of encryption over another, right? So if you're using TLS versus IPsec, you get a 5-tuple versus a 2-tuple. Right. And so in some of the cases with some of the examples, the feedback I responded to this morning was like, well, you could use SSH and TLS and achieve this. Yes. But by pointing out exactly what data elements are used, that they were using TCP header information, that has to be exposed for the function. So IPsec wouldn't allow that type of access, for instance.
And just to answer an earlier question, the working group last call ends on December 4th. But for people in the US, there's Thanksgiving and stuff, so many days are lost then. And also, I'd like to point out, you're likely to be sitting on a plane for a really long time in the next couple of days. Reading this on a plane would be an awfully good idea. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm Darren Pettis. I'm an operator. And I wanted to thank Kathleen and Al for taking the time to write the document. And I am one that's guilty of not reading the current format, so I'd like to read the updates and understand them on those very long plane rides that we all have. But I think that it addresses many of the usages. But I'd like to share that there are some very real needs here that you have explained. For us to do the work that we need to do to secure data, there's expectations that your data is secure, and there's expectations that the applications are up in time. And we all use these applications, whether it's banking or shopping or things that we all do today. So while it's very important to be secured on the internet, and I'm a privacy advocate as well, I think that everything that TLS Group has done with 1.3 on the internet is outstanding. But I think there's a different use case for inside the enterprise. Because of those expectations, we need to secure and keep those up. So that's one of the reasons that we've been working to bring that awareness, because encryption, it's a hot topic, right? Some folks, really want encryption as much as possible, but we also have to perform our job, and that's kind of where we're in the middle, right? So we have to find that middle ground. We have to get that pendulum in the middle so we can be as secure as humanly possible, but not to the point where we can't look at the data inside the enterprise and secure it and troubleshoot it. So it's that balance that we're looking for. Thank you.
So I'd say then, as you're reading the draft, if you find something that doesn't have one party feeling like they're open to the conversation from the draft and text changes would help, then that would be welcome, just so that it's hard to make a document neutral.
Right.
And it's important in this case.
Yeah.
And I know we haven't gotten it perfect yet, but hopefully with help we'll get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And this helps understand the use case. So it seems like right now we have a solution with TLS 1.3 that's really good, but it doesn't address all of the use cases out there. So a document like this can really look at all the various use cases and then come up with a solution that fulfills all of those needs and doesn't leave any one party completely in the cold, is very good. And lastly, I would just echo Mike's comments about the cloud. Although they do have SLAs there that they want to offer up, and we want to hold them accountable. At the end of the day, how do you do it if you can't see? So right now, we have the finger pointing going on between the cloud and the enterprise with problems, and it's dark and we're not able to see it. So I think having some visibility internally only to people that only need to see it would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, so we're trying to document the functions performed so that there's awareness and discussions can happen from the awareness.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
And we're running low on time, so we're going to cut off the mics at the end of the queue, and if you can keep them short.
Yeah, I wanted to respond sort of rhetorically to the question that Ignaz asked about making encryption like less attractive or less desirable. I think over time we have encountered problems that have caused us to reconsider or abandon methodologies that we formerly used because they were no longer good enough. And I think like static keying was an attractive thing for a long time, much like, say, RC4 was an attractive thing for a long time. And because they were sufficient to meet our needs and we had tooling around them and they offered certain benefits, like, for example, computational efficiency, i.e. it was fast on low-end hardware for certain kinds of behaviors. At some point, like some of those things, we look at them and we decide that they're a little dangerous. And so, if we decide that static keys are a little bit too dangerous at some point, then, they end up being a less desirable portion of our toolkit. And over time, they end up not being part of it. And we use better things instead.
Yeah, so I'll just respond to that. The goal of the draft isn't to get at that debate, but to document what they're doing so that alternate or improved practices, where appropriate, might be found, right? So if they can surface the stuff under that, not the, but I don't have this anymore.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
The stuff under it so that it enables the conversation so we actually can go forward to hopefully better and improve solutions.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that happens to you at some point is if you're using a methodology that you like because it's performant or it meets your needs, at some point your regulators or your industry group comes along and says, well, it's not actually good enough anymore.
Right.
And so whether it meets your needs or not is sort of irrelevant at that point. And I think we need to be mindful of the sort of existential threat of that happening with any particular tool that we use. But in particular, the tools that we use now, because tools that we don't use yet are actually really easy to get rid of, right? It's the tools that are actually embedded in our methodologies and in our organizations that are actually hard and take time to replace. And so, I mean, those are in fact the ones that are the most expensive to deal with, and of course the most problematic when they become less desirable to use.
So we are really low on time, so we'd also cut the line after Lars.
So as AD for TLS, I'm not hearing anyone saying they want RSA static keys reinstated. They're looking at their functions and how do they go forward. So no one's saying keep this bad stuff in it, as far as I'm aware.
Lars Eckert. So not speaking as Quick Chair, but over in Quick, we only scratch the surface of this, or we have only a very limited problem compared to what you have up on the slide there, but it's already proving quite challenging. And specifically, sort of, So network operators may or may not have equipment that uses information that TCP provided in the clear to do network management, and Quick encrypts that information. And one of the options over in Quick now is that maybe we want to expose some limited set of that information in authenticated clear text, so you couldn't modify it, you couldn't NAT, for example, but you could still see it. The interesting issue is that is new with Quick is that because the Quick state machine actually is going to act on the information that is in the encrypted part of the packet, and we're just basically copying out some stuff into the clear text, that's not necessarily accurate, right? So just because we're putting something in the clear does not actually make a Quick stack operate on that at all. And so inherently there's less trust for an operator, because with TCP you could kind of trust that the ITT you saw was the ITT that the TCP stack on the other end was going to use. With Quick, you don't know. And I don't know if there's any good answer to this, but it sort of adds another problem dimension to this whole thing, right? Even if you expose information, the network operator or the function, if you want to generalize it, kind of needs to sort of somehow have some opinion about whether it can trust that information at all.
So because we don't necessarily, the operators responding might not have experience with Quick, they might not realize some of their impacts. So if you could read the draft or have someone help and see that angle. The other thing I don't think we got responses specific to would be like TCP crypt work. So these, they're all good things, but understanding how we broach these conversations so that, you guys can consider, do you make a change?
You could recreate that problem with TCP crypt by simply sending encrypted TCP header information inside the crypto frame, and TCP operates on that, and whatever's on the outside of the packet isn't actually what TCP operates on. We're not at that state with TCP because there's a lot installed based on all that, but with Quick, that's currently where we are. Everything is encrypted, and now we're sort of talking about making unencrypted. And sort of, so my meta point is that sort of it would be awfully nice if we were to actually, so if operators wanted to put all of this new management functions in there, that they first actually knew whether they wanted to trust that information that they maybe really can't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. So we're 15 minutes behind. Anneli, we cut the line already. So can we have your reply on the IETF mailing list as the last call? Thank you very much.
And thank you. And while Ignace is bringing up the next set of slides, the last time this went to IETF last call, we got almost no feedback from operators to say, these are actually problems that I see and think are important. So this time it would be really useful if people can comment, during and after. Okay, thank you. And great.
Hello, everyone. I'm Liang from China Mobile. Today, I'm presenting on behalf of the proponents of the network slicing team. We basically want to share with you what we have been doing after IETF 99, in particular in response to the feedback from the non-working group forming BAF. And the presentation will be formed with 4 individual drafts and in 2 parts. The first part, I'll talk about the problem statement and use cases, and the other one is about 2 solution-based draft. So next slide. Oh, I can control it myself. Right. So problem statement and use case. So if we have a look at what we get from the ADs and all these attendants from the IETF 99 in the BAF, a general question is asked about what we have been presenting is, well, this is a too big question to work on as a single working group. So in response to that, we as a team actually decide to move the focus specifically to the operational management of network slicing in scope of the IETF work. So there are also discussion about, okay, there's no clear requirement for transport network slicing from 3GPP revision 15 perspective. Should we still do network slicing in IETF? In our point of view, the answer is an absolute yes, because network slicing is a general topic, not for specific standardization group to work on. We all know that 3GPP ICOT and BBF and now IETF are all looking at this problem. And we think as transport network, if we define transport network as not TCP transport, I mean transport network, it intrinsically actually asks for the capability of network slicing. So as a service provider, we see that although slicing is more about a new concept of business model, a new concept of how you manage your network, how you slice your network for dedication uses, we see this type of dedication and business model is a norm for the future network. People can argue that VPN is a network slice in transport network. I don't argue that this is wrong. This is right, but this is correct. But this is only one case for the basic, the most simple network slicing. We see network slicing a more integrated system with more components other than connectivity. So we'll have more discussion on next slides. It's also asked in the BAF that we still have not have a consensus what a network slice is in the scope of networks in the scope of IETF. So we tried to have consensus on that in the team. So we believe we have consensus now that network slicing with the ING is a mechanism, is a management mechanism that a service provider or an infrastructure owner or a virtual service provider, whatever, can use to make the dedication to their network and to provide this dedication to third-party tenants, which we call in the draft network slice tenants. A network slice without the ING is actually the dedicated network, and it is a manageable group of network components, including connectivity, storage, computing, which are the resources part, and also include, which we call it in the draft, generalized network function or generalized service functions. So those are the functions. Either it is physical network function or virtualized network function that exist in the network that under the supervision of your service provider can be provided, can be exposed to the network slice tenants. So from the definition, we see that the network slicing or the network slice itself is going to be a heterogeneous system, and it has to be supervised because without supervision, we can't guarantee the sliced dedicated network can be provided with a guaranteed service for the network slice tenants. So we have the name as the problem statement, supervised heterogeneous network slicing. This is a general diagram. We see where our operation and management sit in the system or in the architecture. So the upper block is what we call it network slice as a service. So it's really not IETF specific. It's just, help us to understand. So you can create via a portal, for example, from a template, predefined by a service provider or infrastructure owner, for generalized purpose slices, or most common slices that has been discussed a lot in 3GPP, for example, 3 different types of runs. And also you can create more customized ones just by adding the components you want. For example, a gaming company may want a certain topology for their game servers for deterministic or for low latency applications. So that's different type of creations. So in the middle part where, the common operation and management come into the picture is what we call it cross-segment slice manager. We define segment, but this can be discussed. This is just a terminology we are using currently. We define segment simply as, if we think IETF, take care of the internet, then we also take care of the backhaul. And then there are other segments. For example, you have RAN and you have the cellular core. So that's the segment. And inside the IETF segment, there are also different domains. So we have, for example, maybe ACTN domains. You have, the legacy domains where we still use non-SDN aware traditional EMS system to manage our transport devices. And you also have your access domains, and you have your OTN or the WDM domains where you have different managers. So that's, we call it domain. And those controllers or management system, we call it domain agents. It's in red because in the latest version draft, there's a different name, but please refer to the slides as a more latest version. So, components for network slicing. Now we have defined 5 types of different components. Connectivity, computing, storage. Similarly for NFV methodology, where the networking, computing, and storage. So the 3 major different kinds of network components also exist in transport. Because in computing, storage, a typical usage of these 2 types of resources in transport is a customized controller. Or in your CDN network, it could be a storage-centric service that a tenant may want in their network slice. And then the generalized function will be a wider category. So it's also a section that is left out for more discussion here. So we tried, I'll talk about this later in the solution-based draft, we tried to integrate some of the examples of the existing network functions that we think may be capable of exposed to network slice tenant. So the example can be firewalls, NAT servers, and others. And then we leave a extendable session with others, because we see new technologies that may not be widely deployed in wide area network. It might be deployed in some specific local network or some specific domain in a operator's network, for example, ICN and others. So we leave that out, and then people can add what they actually think is available for slicing as well. So the common operation and management, in short, COMS, is the base of our work now, and we basically deal with these operation and management matters for network slicing. And I don't know if it is too small. This is basically a working flow, how a network slice tenant asks for a network slice service, and then the service profile can be step-by-step mapping to the bottom layer, what we call in an IETF network configuration model. So basically, you have a service delivery model, which is more business-like, business viewpoint. And then because we have different segments, then the service delivery model would be a global one, and these, the composite ones. And then the COMS comms, we are talking about, we'll take the delivery model, service delivery model, and map them to a information model described inside the cross-segment slice manager or the slice manager within the IETF domain. Because using the information model, you can have a visualized set of information how a network slice actually look like. And then these information model will be used to further map to domain-specific network configuration models, which can be used by what we call domain agent, which is the controllers, controls the specific administrative domains. So that's basically the working flow. And the main functions of comms I've listed there. I won't, just read them. There are more explanation in the draft. You're more than welcome to have a look at them and leave your comments in the mailing list, and we can have a lot of discussion on this, because those are top-level descriptions, and there are a lot in detail to be discussed. So with the narrowed scope, we have some bullet point. So as I said, the common information model will be the key for the comms. And then there are other concerns, including monitoring, including lifecycle management, fault detection, protection mechanisms, and those are OEM concerns, and that will have derived models or mechanism or operation or interfaces. And the last three, it's probably more easy to visualize. As a network slice manager, you will have a northbound interface with these, we call it NSAAS platform, where the service delivery model will be sent to the northbound interface of the network slice manager. So we need to define what that model looks like, what protocol is going to be used. We're not going to, for now, we don't see the necessity of defining new protocols to deliver that, but we do see a requirement of defining a model. And also for the southbound interface. But southbound interface needs to be discussed because it might be in scope, it might not, because for specific domains with mature technology has been done in IETF, they may want to do their own network configuration model themselves, which is compatible with the network slice level kind of information model, and we're open to that. But for some legacy systems and others, we can also discuss to bring that working item into the scope of comms. So that's all for the problem statement. Do you want to?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I know it's from Nokia. If it's possible to comment here about this draft, so I'm happy to provide some comments. Is that okay now?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, you can argue a lot about network slicing, what it is, but we all need to acknowledge that the current term of network slicing is driven by 5G. And there are a lot of definitions available already in the industry coming from NGMN and 3GPP. And I would highly recommend not to confuse the industry with additional definitions for the same term, but utilize the definitions that already exist in the industry. So this is one comment. I appreciated many of your proposals and actually the way that you presented that, looking from the business level and the catalog based and whatever. But one thing that I must raise concern is that network slicing at the end of the day, it's end-to-end. The end-to-end network slice can be built of multiple slices, one from the RAN, one from the core, one from the transport, etc. But for the management and orchestration, we must have holistic view and do it end-to-end the same way, because at the end of the day, it will be one entity that is doing that top-down. And we must have consistent view. And a lot of work has been done in SA5, in 3GPP, already on network slicing. And I'm very much concerned that we deviate or might deviate from what is being done or considered there and develop own solutions here that at the end of the day will not be consistent with what is being done there. So I see a lot of value here in what you say, but I just see the need to work together to align, because otherwise it will not be valuable for the industry.
Yes. That's very good suggestions. And honestly, because we've been working with inside China Mobile, the 3GPP team just sits, beside me. So we have been working closely, and we know, in SA2, the definition of network slice in 3GPP does not include transport network. So it's RAN plus core. End-to-end is RAN and core. It's not RAN transport core. So that's in 3GPP SA2. But I know in SA5, there are discussion of a end-to-end management in terms of network slicing. That includes everything. But my understanding is 3GPP is not going to manage transport network anyway, but there is going to be requirement coming through. And that's, I agree with Greg, there's no clear requirement, 3 months ago in 99, but we are more confident in IETF as a team working on network slicing. When there is a requirement as part of the end-to-end network slicing management from SA5, we're more confident to respond. And internally in IETF, there are more use cases that end-to-end does not include RAN and core. Everybody, that's a argument, a view that I also would like to share. There are plenty of use cases where you need a dedication of network without cellular network. And that is also some use cases we would like to look at in terms of IETF scope.
Okay. My name is Georg Meyer. I'm the 3GPP liaison person to IETF. We had this discussion. We had some of these discussions last time, and I was the bad guy who told you that we don't have any requirements at the moment from 3GPP. We don't have any official requirements still now, and I'm doubtful that this will happen within the next year, that that there will anything come up dedicatedly from us towards IETF. But I think what we said last time and what you also have in your presentation and what I fully agree with is this work, if IETF sees a need to work on slicing within the IETF, then you should go ahead and not should all the time ask what is 3GPP doing and why is 3GPP doing that. As you said now, for example, transport network is left out of our focus. It's usually not in our focus. So this work on slicing is going on in several standards bodies in parallel, and we will create a certain amount of confusion for sure with different definitions and so on. That's inescapable. So that fact we have to be clear about. But I think if you look at it from the IETF perspective, that's what we also determined last time is the healthiest way forward at the moment. And then in the end, we can see what parts of your work will be needed and could be incorporated into the 5G work. So I'm not saying we shouldn't coordinate, but I think the time for coordination is very short. So therefore, I appreciate the approach you're doing here. Thank you.
Yeah, I must say that I agree to many of your comments, so it's not a question. I also acknowledge that transport slice is also something that we need to look into. I just say that the management and orchestration is something more holistic, something that you need to have consistent approach end to end. And I don't see that from management and orchestration point of view, you'll have different approaches in the core, in the transport, and in the access. So and also in the end to end. So, and also in the business level, in the gateways between the different operators. So I really believe that we need to have a holistic view, and I don't want to get into the arguments here, how to coordinate and how to collaborate, but we need to ensure that we create something, if we create something, that it is something that is valid for the end-to-end and aligned with what is being done in the industry end-to-end. And I'm not sure how to manage that, because definitely the IETF see only particular segment on this end-to-end.
Jari, thank you for this. And this is an important topic. It's dear to me as well. But I think you're describing this sort of in a largely in the same approach as we took in the previous IETF, sort of top down, that describe a concept, and then keep describing what pieces it actually needs. And it's a useful concept. But the concept is not entirely new. It's probably going to depend on several other technologies and concepts as well. And there are many existing or under development IETF technologies that go into this. I would think virtualization technology in general, resource reservations, VPN technologies of various sorts, traffic engineering, management frameworks, data models. And of course, there's lots that goes beyond the things that we at the IETF do, like pieces of software that do orchestration. I think what we're searching for is the answer of like what specific work there is that we can do to make sure that we can do the kinds of wonderful things that you're describing here. So get to the concrete stuff. And mind you, some of these things, they are like, I want to get to the coordination piece a little bit, because much of this is like existing IETF technology that can be used for this purpose. And it's really our job at the IETF to figure out that our technologies are up to speed on whatever the communities elsewhere or the users require, whether it's for 5G or for other purposes. I would actually like to advocate also thinking about this, not just from the top down, but also bottom up, like what do we have and which one of those things actually may need some enhancements. I'm actually working with Jeff Tantura on that question. We're not quite done yet. We're trying to get to a presentation on Thursday in the routing area working group. Maybe you can join us there for that and have a discussion. We'll see how far we get. We're trying to publish a document before this IETF failed to get to the end just then. And I think the data models, internal data model describing a slice or a slice service or some of the components is one obvious answer that we will need to work on. But even there, you have this question of how does that relate? If we do some data model, how does it relate to other data models that we've had done in various IETF working groups already? And of course, there may be other parts. So I think that's that work that we have to do. Like how, what are the details that we actually have to work on, and how does this relate to other IETF work?
Thank you.
Mehmet Ersu, Nokia. I generally have it was always the same. I generally have an issue with the term common information model, because the reader never knows to whom it is common or from which perspective it is common. Common is a general word or generic word you can use for everything. So you probably need to give a more precise title to it to be able to know what it is. Can you go back to slide 6, please? Okay. So
we're already on time, so we'll have to do it fairly quickly.
So as you probably know, NFV in general is in standard development already many years, and there are different STOs out there working on information models, and they have defined such basic elements of those information models already. Some of them are really substantial. I would like to propose to use them. Others are also there, which need to be kind of harmonized. So are you, as I didn't see any sign in your drafts that you are going to cooperate or use an existing information model as the basis of your model or build on top of it, are you going to prepare your model from scratch, or what is your plan?
Yeah, we're more than happy to building models based on existing technology, just like Jeff said. Jerry said there's a lot of within IETF or outside IETF. There are also many existing technologies or data model, different kind of model that can be referred to be built on to have these. Well, I still prefer common information model because I have really not go through that slide. The common information model is technology non-specific, so that's a slice level description. And you're concerned of, you have to have specific type of models that you can use to, guide your underlay technology to initiate your dedication. Then that's, the mapping part, and that's what we call it network configuration model. And that is, your concern of the specific ones.
Yeah, as we said, the terms need to be harmonized with existing terms in the standardization out there. So I see also a big necessity to harmonize with existing information models and not to try to do it from scratch.
Of course.
So therefore, I mean, it is kind of a adventurous project if you do it from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Alex, do you want to answer now, knowing that the time that we take now, we won't have it to present the next presentation? So what do you prefer, to give your argument now or that he continues? Thank you.
Okay, I'll go really quickly. So use cases, only 2 slides of use cases. Use case, it doesn't really change too much. We take out those unrelated use cases and we add one more, which is categorized in the customization group. So we basically, the use cases are divided to 3 different types, which is the customization, resource assurance, and new technologies. If you have time, have a look at it and leave your comments in the mailing list. And then the solution-based ones. As I said, the information model is a key for the common operational management of network slicing. And we didn't, for now, we didn't restrict where you use this information model, because you can either use a finer granularity of the description in the IETF domain, or you can use a bigger granularity, a rougher granularity information model with the same level of abstraction in the cross-segment slice manager. But the methodology are the same. So they all give you a visualized network slice. And it is the middle part or middleware to map your service delivery model to the underlay specific network configuration model.
And actually, can I ask you to go through the slides really quickly because it's already been about half an hour.
Sorry about that. Sure. So yes, this is the information model aligned with the components I talked about in the problem statement. And then the last one, interconnect. This is the second solution-based draft we have. So we have visualized a extendable feature of network slicing management where you can, have this kind of recursive management profile, treating a sector of your network slice a subnet. So with this recursion, you can create your subnet and connect them with interconnect to create an end-to-end network slice. Of course, this end-to-end is within the working scope in IETF. So thank you very much for the time. And towards next IETF meeting, we would like to get people involved, giving reviews, giving feedback, and we're trying to align the terminologies. It's still a little bit mess around, according to the 4 new drafts and the previous 4 or 5 drafts. We're going to align them. And also, we're going to try to make an initial charter with a comp-centric working items with the northbound interfaces, with interconnect interfaces, and with potential southbound interfaces, and talk about some of those lifecycle monitoring, protections, fault detection mechanisms. Yes, and there is a demo on Thursday all day at Coffee Break area. You're welcome to join us. Thank you very much.
So one question, this will still run under the name net slices. Is this the intended working group name or BOF name or whatever?
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch what you said.
So you're saying you're working on a charter now, right? So it's still in the BOF phase or pre-BOF phase. I don't know what the correct naming is. Or?
It's still in no state right now because
Okay.
the BOF is whenever you prepare for the next IETF meeting. Right, this one didn't make it, so for the next one, they're considering.
So the next
work
in the
on
next
the BOF.
one, there should be a BOF, and that will be still under the name net slices, right?
That depends. But the name.
Because I think some people were looking for net slices on the agenda or whatever, and there was no possibility to find it. So I try to understand. What
This
we
is
should be
always
looking.
confusing whenever people change the name.
Yes.
On one hand, this is good because the focus, the refocus. On the other
Absolutely.
side, I mean, all the draft name are changed, and it's difficult. Understood.
Okay.
It's Alex Gallis from University College London. I just want to make comment in somehow clarifying previous speakers here, not you. One is that I don't think that this working group is trying to create a common universal information model across all the 7 separately defined by standard bodies information model which exist today. The one which is created here is only for the use in a context of network slicing, which is specific and to be practically used. An information model is as good as it is used. And clearly, such an information model for network slicing could be used in orchestration and management and few other things and APIs. And in that sense, it is common to all this area if possible, but obviously requires coordination. Second point is, I don't think that this group failed to understand that in the last 20 years, there were a lot of definition and work on network slicing. Actually, quite a comprehensive list of definitions were created last time. The issue is to move forward beyond definition in terms of finding some additional work which should be beneficial. And clearly, some are related to the bottom-up, coming from VPN or otherwise, which is very important, but also from top-down. And the both parts have to link. And that's why I understand that this work, as it applies to transport network, is very much timely in a scope of overall standardization in the world now and could add value, but also, if it does it, has to do the bottom-up part and the top-down part a bit. And the proposal about what the APIs are related to these aspects are essential. And this is the next stage, if you want, and to bring it back. I always believe that multi-domain issues are also fundamental. These days, multi-domain is a norm, it's not an exception. Therefore, it has to be added. Although I understand that IETF has many domain-specific bottom-up technology related to network slicing, but there is no top-down to link the two. And that's where this potentially work could lead. And I hope that that answered to one of the concerns before. But obviously, it's a small group. It's only 25 people. Should move forward. And next time, we'll have more, in case that there are better way to move forward in coordination rather than in isolation, which is very easy to do, actually. I hope not.
Yark. So I think one of the practical questions is that if we're doing data models, are they sort of, I suppose, sort of guess implied that they be like only for slicing, or are they some extensions of existing, say, VPN data models, or what are they? I mean, that's at least in my mind an unclear question at the moment, and it would be good to get clarification for that somehow. But I actually came up here to respond to this discussion about working group or BOF status and name. I don't think you should only think about the possibility of success being, you know, we have a BOF and then a working group is created. Success can also be other things. It can be that we gain understanding of what we need to do, and then we put the work on multiple different working groups. I'm not ruling out that there'd be a working group on, you know, data model creation for slicing, if you don't, you know, can't just extend existing ones, but that actually need totally new ones. But I think it, you know, it would be perhaps more likely to succeed if it's just figured out what we need and then, you know, divided work and possibly had one common working group somewhere that did, you know, some of the high-level data model stuff or some terminology or something. But I think it would be difficult to create a net slicing working group for multiple reasons. One is that it would be a lot of work, but more importantly, it'd be sort of removed from the other work in the IETF that is sort of touching on the same topics. It might be better to have it connect with those works instead of separate in its own corner. Thank you.
That's also why internally we didn't use network slices as the name for our, you know, newest draft. We think that's too broad, and that make people think it's too general. There are too many things to do in a single working group. So we want to just focus on the management and operation parts of it, and to make things small as a, you know, a coordination kind of working group to do the select level management. So yes, we can have more discussion on, you know, the format of how this work can be proceed.
Okay, so I think we have to cut it off, unfortunately. We've already eaten into a bunch of Opsawg time, and thank you very much to them for letting us use that it's turned into. So thank you very, very much. I think it was really useful. And Opsawg shows. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, again. This is the second part of a joint meeting, the Ops AWG area. I see somebody waving. No, that's fine. Note well, again, anything that you say here is a contribution. Please take a look at the relevant RFCs for the IPR and just be aware of the note well. Blue sheets are still circulating. If somebody has not signed the blue sheet, please do so. Those who have the blue sheets, can we please see a show of hands? Where are the blue sheets? Has anyone got a blue sheet? All right, I see one there. Second one probably circulating too. Please sign the blue sheets. Working group status update.
Okay. Yeah, we have 6 active working group documents. Firstly, the CapWeb alternate tunnel. We changed the document type to experimental and completed the working group procedure and sent to ISG. On the service model explained document, we just got the response. It's approved by the ISG and in RFC editor queue. So congratulations. We also complete the mod work. It's in ISG last call. Later, editor will report the latest status of this document.
We're also going to have a presentation on the Yang model today. Chin will be presenting that. Currently, it's gone through Yang Doctor's review, and there's been some substantive updates to the model based on that review, specifically around features, and we'll get a summary of that in the presentation today.
Couple of items which are somewhat more active and larger pieces of work. The IPFix BGP community document. It has been through a few revisions. It is not being presented this time. Authors believe that the document is quite stable, and they think that they have addressed the comments received so far. Please take a look at the document and comment on that. We plan to issue a last call for that soon. And we are also looking for a shepherd for this document. If ideally affiliated with an operator and who would have interest in this technology. If somebody would like to volunteer for that, please do either that on the list or approach working group chairs. So please, if somebody is interested in helping to move this document forward, please volunteer for becoming a shepherd for it. The second large item is TACAX. TACAX authors are not presenting at this meeting. Once again, the document has been updated. The changes were in the security considerations section mostly to cover the comments received on the mailing list previously. The other comments are not addressed in the current version. Authors will produce an updated version covering that again soon. After that, we would expect to see one more revision to cover the comments after the potential discussion, also looking into archives to address what has been raised before. And after that, we will be thinking about issuing a last call for that. Once again, take a look at the document and comment on the mailing list.
Then I think we can start the working group discussion. We have 3 items to discuss. And firstly, the Yang data model for NAT.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Qing Wu. So Mohammed cannot make a trip to Singapore, but he joined remotely. I will be speaker for this topic. Loudly? Okay. Better? Okay. So this topic is about the YANG model for NET, and this work actually motivated by the network programming and network automation, and we cover several NET flavor that are widely deployed. For example, NET 4.4, NET 6.4, NET PT, and stateless IPv4, IPv6 translation, and EAM, and so we actually this draft has been there for a while. We actually make several revisions for this draft before the Singapore meeting, and this draft just we get adopted in August since 2007, and we try to draft this work faster to reach several people in the community to have to review from several perspectives. For example, in 0.1 version, we actually cover CLAT support. We got a review from Lee Hao, and also get some comments from Judy. And actually, I think the design consideration, actually, we will consider two options. If we support dedicated prefix, and that means the stateless XLAT will be provided. If there's no dedicated prefix that is configured, then we will require to configure the NET 4.4, and then the stateless XLAT will be applied on the NET 4.4. The second change is about the NPDv6. For this, actually, we invite review from Fred Baker, and we make some change. Most of the change, actually, for example, we add the ingress interface, egress interface for the NET device, and we also improve the example that that is in appendix, and in 0.3 version we actually add the EAM support, and so the suggestion actually from Tor Anderson, and we actually make a revision to add this feature support. In 0.4 version, we add the CGN support. We get a sufficient review from Akar Lucen, like Wim, and another people is Christina. And to support CGN, we actually the change we made, actually we can associate the policy with the NET instance. We also add the NET RIM support. That means the NET function can be associated with interface or VRF instance. In 0.5 version, we add the NET 6.4 support. So thanks to Rajiv to comment on that, we actually make some clarification to clarify how the module to apply for the stateless and stateful. And in 0.6 version, we actually just made some editorial change, and we request the young doctor review. As Chair mentioned, we actually we get some review from young doctor like Yugen, and we have a lot of discussion. We made a 2 revision. We trace some minor version and a major version, and here we will actually focus on the major issue. We will actually to discuss this open issue. Actually, we already made a new revision. The new revision is 0.8, and we already posted, and this version will address Yugen comments. So in early young doctor review, actually there are several issues we discussed. The first one is about for some of the parameter set we may be optional. So we actually use feature to represent this kind of optional parameter set. So we made a lot of changes to make a good use of this kind of entity. The second change is we think we misuse some entity that reference to Verve instance. So we have a lot of discussion on OPSAWG managed about this, and we actually discussed the 3 options. First, we can use identity actually, but we will avoid struggling to define the semantics for the Verve instance. The second option is we will reference to network instance, but we think it's not a stable reference. The third choice, we will totally abandon the Verve instance, but we may leave for the future to define this kind of feature, define these kind of things. And but we think in our net model for many use cases actually for some use cases actually use Verve instance. For some use cases they don't use Verve instance. And also some of the reviewer actually request to support the Verve instance. So based on this, so we given that we think we will actually take the first option. We will actually use identity, and so the current change cover this. Another issue is about logging. Actually, logging is actually has been defined as part of this net model. And in this net model, we actually specify like interface and IP address for the log server. We also specify what kind of protocol can be used, for example, RPFix and syslog. But you can think for a standard track document, maybe it's not wise to actually leave the all of these log detail parameter unspecified or not well defined. So we actually, based on this kind of discussion, to resolve this, we actually totally remove this log specific parameter to address this. But we still keep the log enable parameter. Yeah. So another one is about the relationship with the MIB net. Actually, we define a new section to clarify the relationship with MIB net. Actually, I think the difference with MIB net actually is we also consider to associate a policy with net function. But similar to the net MIB, actually, we think net MIB actually only consider the performance monitoring, but in net MIB RFC actually they did indicate what kind of parameter need to be configured. So the net YARN model will be used to configure all these parameters. That's the similarity. So also there's some minimal changes. For example, some gauge need to fluctuate faster. So we actually add some notification interval to rate limit this kind of notification. So that's pretty much the change we made. Actually, we already covered this in the latest version, in version 8. So we think actually this is joint work with Cisco, Juniper, and we also get a sufficient review from the Nokia, Lucent, and we have implementation in FDOR project, open source project. So we think it's pretty much ready and stable. We like to request the working with LASCOM. Thank you.
Elliot Leard. So how many revisions did you go through between the last IETF and this IETF, just to count?
Actually, this draft just get adopted in August 2007 in 00 version, working group version, and we spring on this draft. We made actually 7 or 8 versions.
So commit early, commit often. Huh?
Yes.
Okay. Just to be clear, I'm not sure that necessarily is the best definition of stable. On the other hand, I think it's a great, I think you should go forward with a working group last call to demonstrate that we can actually produce a Yang model with some alacrity.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just to be brief, but we did get, there were a lot of reviews, so the iteration was great, but it was because we were getting those reviews. So I would encourage people to read this latest version. I've found some issues, I'll send them out on the list, but please review, and I do agree. I think going through a last call at this point would probably be a useful thing, to your point, Elliot.
Okay, since you have asked for the last call, I wanted to know how many of you in this room has read this document. About five or six or so.
I think you should count.
Or 8. Okay. And based on the presentation, if you think it's ready to last call, please hum. And if you think it's not ready for last call, please hum now. Okay, and I think we can move the discussion in the mailing list and confirm the results.
Thank you.
The next, the mod work.
And Elliot, I'm sure you will be quick. I know you have a lot of slides, but we're getting up on time here.
I'll push it as fast as I can. Goodness me, how did you end up with this deck?
You gave it to me. That's why I said be quick, because I know you have a lot.
Okay, just a moment. All right, these are it's the wrong slides. Is the simple answer. So I'm just going to step through some of the changes that we've gone through. I'm not going through the whole deck that I sent you. We are now complete with working group last call and IETF last call with the MUD draft. I don't have the exact. I don't have the slides I intended to have up here. I'm sorry about that. Let me just go through some of the open issues that came out of that. We had some discussions about privacy considerations with Adrian. There were some terminology consistency issues that improved with Adrian being the new ISC. He was particularly editorial towards this document, even though it won't run through his stream. Mark Nottingham has helped me with a number of issues, most notably clarity on the use of HTTP processing, which is his expertise. We pulled the Masa server out of the document based on working group last call comments. Now there are a couple of open issues. The first open issue that we have, and it's sort of a big one, is that we're normatively dependent on the netmod ACL model. That model went through last call. It's fourth, I think. And there are some open issues Christian raised in the netmod working group. I'm hoping that he will close those with the authors very soon by making some proposals. But that means that there will be some changes to the resultant instantiation in JSON for MUD. My proposal is to pause at least for a little while to let them try to fix their wagons. And if they don't, then we'll take further steps. I'll come back to you for further steps. But I'm hoping that all that is really necessary is that we take into account their changes. I regenerate the examples in the draft, and life is good. Now, there are 2 or 3 other issues that are open. Mark Nottingham would like the version number to come out of the URL and go into the model so that it's represented in JSON. The good news apparently about the good about that is that it conforms to some sort of best practice within the web community. The bad about that is it will forever tie us to JSON, at least until we do a next version which specifies some other extension model. So I propose to move this draft forward if nobody really cares about being forever tied to JSON, that we just live with that and say, okay, we'll commit to that for the foreseeable future. And I think that's the easiest way forward. If anybody has an objection, I think now or on the list soon is the best thing to address that. And that's one of the big open issues. The other one is that Mark has asked for, by the way, if we do that, I'll create a new element inside the model with the version number. It's not there. And so I'll plan to do that. It will probably be like a decimal number or something like that. So you can do a compare.
Hello, everyone.
The second issue that Mark raised with me that he would like closed is he'd like a new information element that specifies the name of the URL for the signature. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Hello?
It just means that when you generate the model, you have to know where, you have to place where the signature is going to be. It also means that you have to keep that signature with the file if you're not going to be doing the normal HTTP processing. I don't think that's anything shocking to anybody. You would have had to have done that pretty much anyway, I think. The third thing that Mark raised, and I like his comments here, is that currently we indirect off of the model to pull out a system description. Essentially, it's a URL. You say, go fetch this URL, and then process that URL as HTML. He said, that's a security problem because HTML processing is a security problem pretty much. And so he said, go back to UTF-8 or something like that. And so I propose we do just that. It actually simplifies things.
Hello?
It does mean perhaps there are some, we don't track language tags as well, but you still get different character sets to UTF-8. And that should be enough for us for this version. If we want to go further, we can extend the model to go further. So those are the big changes. With those changes taken into account, does anybody have any objection with the way forward that I'm suggesting?
Elliot, Joe Clark, just asking as a chair, have you asked any of the operators you've been speaking with what they think of these changes? Or the implementers, I guess I should say.
Literally, well, I've talked to one or two implementers, and they're like, yeah, okay. This actually simplifies things. Sometimes sometimes they say, yeah, okay, it simplifies things in some way. I don't think people really care, to be honest. These are relatively, the only issue I think we would see, and the only ones that would see it would be people who are trying to look well into the future as to whether somebody wants to translate all this into CBOR instead of JSON. And I don't think we have to worry about that, honestly, because the processors that are supposed to deal with this are not constrained. So that's the only issue that I see. And I don't think it's a big one. So with that, what I propose to do with the draft is Mark owes me a little bit of text, which I'm going to try and hash in. I propose to the area directors and the chairs that what I'll do is I'm going to pause for a little while and see how things kink out with the ACL model. And if that kinks out relatively quickly, I'll just take what they've done, regenerate a new draft, and then if you'll take that for purposes of IESG review, I think that would be really good. Quick enough?
Quick enough.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Oh, one more thing. Sorry. Next steps. We have people who want to work on extensions to the model. And that will be coming in London, I think. We'll probably see some extensions to MUD coming through in London. So watch this channel.
That's great. And the last one is the remote presentation, I think. Press the The voice is broken.
Your audio is really poor quality. Maybe it will improve with time. Could you please try speaking? Just to train codecs and buffers and other things. No, it's still not good. No, still not. No, it's still too choppy. Right, still too bad. Is there anyone in the room who can make this presentation here locally? Any of the authors, co-authors, or anyone who can do that? It seems that we are having problems with the remote presentation here, and there's no one local in the room to present that. The audio quality is really not usable. Could you try once again? No, it's still too choppy. Could you try disconnecting and reconnecting again? Possibly via a different channel or... we cannot understand. So this is actually the last chatter topic of the Opsawg. The only one remaining is an open mic.
I was just going to say, if we can just pause and give the person time to reconnect and try again, so that, I mean, it's really important that remote presentations be able to happen. This is so if we could just give it a moment, if he wants to try and reconnect.
Okay, that's a fair point. Thank you.
Good. The quality is good.
It's much better.
Can I speak? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's start. This work is based on our recently research project, and we illustrated the use case of network data for how it applied to the real network. Next slide, please. Okay, some background. The WDM is the method of combining the multiple signals on laser beams at various infrared wavelengths for transmission along the fiber optic media. A WDM system uses a multiplexer as a transmitter to join the several signals together, and a demultiplexer as a receiver to split them apart. So during the wavelength division service running, network data is consistently generated from the wavelength division devices, and it can reflect the process of service running. Next slide, please. So the motivation of this draft has 2 meanings. First one is, in the case of traditional wavelength division service, the customer is accustomed to handle the network failure after the service interruption. So such the passive strategy is inefficient and easily leads to the long service interruption. The second is, we know the statistical characteristics of network data can help operator to judge the time point, whether the service is abnormal or normal, or the service is in risky or healthy. So the goal has three points. The first one is illustrate the requirements of network data used to evaluate the performance of wavelength division service, and demonstrate the different application scenarios of network data. And the second, we are presented the same existing problem of learning network data. Next slide, please. So we'll introduce a KPI terminology. So the KPI terminology is commonly used in the HU and the ESTI organization. So it can be used as the operational state of the network device link or the network protocol in the network. So in general, the network KPI present steady state changes with good network quality, while shows transition the state changes characteristics when there is a network failure or abnormal state. Next slide, please. So we summarize the three characteristics of network data. The subject is the object to be measured, and it has multiple properties from different machines. And the subject may have one or more measured values, and each measured value corresponds to a specific indicator. And each report of the measured value will have a timestamp attribute to indicate its time. Next slide, please. So here we introduce the two use cases. The first one is anonymity detection. So it is identification of items, events, or observations which do not conform to expect pattern or other items in data. So typically the anonymous items will translate to some kind of problem, such as the optical layer problem. For the network equipment performance analysis, multiple features are usually extracted from KPI data, okay, such as time, the value, frequency, and other key factors. So for this scenario, network KPI data includes the such as FEC-BF. This is the short term for forward error correction coding before error correction, and the input optical power, and so on. So this statistic data can be further used to detect the wavelength division service abnormally, or improve the accuracy rate for this detection. And the second is the risk assessment. So this use case is similar to the anonymity detection. However, anonymity detection is coupled with network faults and failure that already happened. And the risk assessment is coupled with network risk that have not happened. So this is a change of the two use cases. So there are two ways to access the network risk. The first one is single KPI scoring and multiple KPI scoring. A single scoring strategy is used a score of a single KPI to assess the network risk. Also, if a device is monitored by several key KPIs, the risk should be analyzed by the integration of these KPI scores. Okay, next slide. So this
Please keep in mind you have used 2/3 of your time slot.
Okay.
You might want to advance.
Okay. This is we can research it from the different machines of fluctuation and the trend and the threshold. We based on these three dimensions to score a single KPI. Okay, next slide, please. So after the three dimensions of KPI are analyzed, the corresponding scores are calculated. So the main goal of the evaluation process is assigning the different weights of the three dimensions. Okay, next slide, please. This is multi-KPI scoring. If a device is monitored by several key KPI, the risk should be analyzed by the integration of this KPI stores, and we can see this is the formula of the waiting process, and we in the right figure we have the two KPI. We can integrate these two KPI to obtain the final network score. Next, please. So this is our last slide, and we present open issues. How to merge data from different time periods. In the process of data collection, the data collection period of the same KPI may be different from each other. For example, for multiple domain deployment service, there may be different connection period for network devices, such as 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and so on. So we're here to welcome everyone to research this topic. Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you for presenting. Anyone would have any questions or comments?
Hi, it's Elliot. First, thanks for presenting your draft and for your patience with dealing with the AV issues. Two comments come to immediately to mind. One is extremely superficial, which is that you seemed, I'm not sure if you're actually using 2119 language in the draft, and I don't think you really intend to for this purpose. The second is more substantial, which is that I don't quite know what you want to do with this work. It seems to me like it is an excellent academic exploration of the problem, but that actually our medium is actually hindering your description of the work. And furthermore, I'm not sure that we have the right reviewers for it. So I wonder how you want to take it forward.
Sorry, due to the voice quality, could you contact the value? And we'll give you my email address. We can talk to you offline.
Sure, I'd be happy. Mine is just lear@cisco.com, or you can pull me out from the Opsawg working group.
Right, thank you. Anyone else would have any comments? Can we please see show of hands who has read the document? Right. 2 people. One question from my side. Previously, a couple of IETFs ago, there was a document on network intelligence, which has some areas, cannot say overlapping, but at least exploring similar areas. Are you aware of that work, or maybe you synchronized with the authors of those documents? Were you able to hear the question? Might be that we have, again, either communication problems or something. This will be taken then to the list. So thank you again for presenting this. And with this presentation, officially the agenda of the OPSAWG is over. There's one open-ended item, open mic. Would anyone have anything to say at open mic? Yes, everyone is eager to run to the social, of course. Right, thank you. Yes, blue sheets. If anyone hasn't signed the blue sheet, please come forward to the chair. And with that, this meeting is over. Thank you for coming.